All right, everyone. Big news yesterday that a lot of people already forgot about, but Trump was right all along. Yes, his campaign was directly spied on by the FBI. Apparently, an informant for the FBI met up with Papadopoulos and was feeding them information. So there you go. There's the smoking gun. We now know absolutely 100% that what Trump thought happened did happen. Now, of course, unmedicated individuals knew this quite some time ago. It was clear, early. It's like, okay, you're probing this. This post-campaign sort of administration is like, where did you get your probable cause? I wonder where it came from. Because a Steele dossier wouldn't have kept up the gig. So what they had to do is retroactively try to justify their own probe. This is what they've been doing for 2 years. And it was with people like Papadopoulos, catch him in a lie, sort of a topical crime, 2 weeks in jail. He was very impressed. For 2 weeks, he had to be in his federal prison, his low-security, barless facility, and eat cafeteria food. I'm sure that it gave him indigestion, but ultimately he didn't have to worry about dropping the soap, if you know what I'm saying. I'm sure that they had the good guards when he was in the shower. He probably had his own shower stall. They just made sure that he didn't have a belt on at the time. 2 weeks. My God, the walls are closing in. By the way, can you imagine being like really claustrophobic and being put in a prison? They should give lesser sentences to people that are established to have claustrophobia, unless they're like shit fucks, then double their sentence anyway, because it would be harder for them. Just a joking sort of suggestion there. One that I'm sure will become a social justice warrior movement any day, knowing the direction that their trajectory is headed in. But yeah, the FBI infiltrated the Trump campaign. Yeah. What more proof do we need other than AG Barr confirming that that's what happened? So there you go. Yes, the FBI spying on a legit, presidential administration, and prior to that, conducting surveillance because of a biased and politically motivated and largely false dossier compiled by a foreign agent. So basically, if you want to fuck with the political system of the United States, all you have to do is be a foreign spy and bounce a bunch of Wikipedia bullshit and Yahoo news articles off of one another and feed them fake news tips and compile a dossier and get a presidential campaign to buy it as op research. That's all you have to do, apparently, as long as you're working for the Democrats, because then it'll go through the FBI, and they'll make sure that their friends there get it to the FISA court. And apparently we had a deputy AG at the time who didn't even read it before signing it, according to his own testimony before Congress. And the FBI was spying on him. How very surreal. How very, very interesting now, isn't it? And yet, despite the fact that they infiltrated his campaign, spent 2 years probing sort of afterwards, despite the fact of all of the surveillance that they conducted, all of the allies they have in the media and everyone Trump's ever been associated with trying to throw him under the bus anyway, despite that, not a single shred of evidence of any form of criminal or civil wrongdoing in the history of Donald Trump's life. He's squeaky clean. He's got to be the squeaky cleanest man in politics, or he's got to be the absolute total fucking master of covering his shit up. One of those two has to be true at this point. There is no way that the FBI and Senate Judiciary and House can probe you for 2 years with that kind of scope. That literally look into anything you've ever touched in your life and anything to the third degree that they've ever touched. There is no way that with that kind of force in a probe, they could not find something criminal unless that person were the absolute mafia master. Maybe his name Donald, maybe it's Big Don in a more literal sense, but I don't think so. I think he's been very careful. I think that he's spent probably at least some number of years before he ran, buddying with as many people as possible. And I think that he knew, hey, I want to do this eventually. I'm just waiting for my time. He wanted to in 2012. He decided not to because I think he was afraid that Obama would hold on by the skin of his teeth. He didn't want to lose. He wanted to win. So he waited till there was no incumbent to run against. He's like, Hillary Clinton, this will be easy. I've been friends with her and all of her friends for 20 years. I know how she ticks. He knew everything, in other words. He had studied and been biding his time for like a decade, rubbing elbows with all of Hollywood, all of Wall Street, the Kremlin, D.C., everything basically, all the bigwigs of New York and L.A. and all the other big places in the world. He'd spent all of his time studying and doing research, and he had his family helping him instead of his associates, which was smart because of various confidentiality involved. They're not going to rat him out basically, and he knows where the bodies are buried, and he knows how things work, and he knows how people operate, all of the people that would possibly oppose him that would be viable, and so he won. And now they're pissed off at him. I think that they're honestly, there have got to be people, especially in places like Hollywood and D.C., which Trump has a huge influence in, and certainly Wall Street. There have got to be people who are nervous and who don't say anything about him because they know, shit, yeah, I remember drunkenly telling Donald Trump about what I did with my kids or some crazy shit like that, and Trump knows it, and they know that Trump knows it. And Trump gives them a wink when he walks by and shakes their hand when he goes through the floor of Congress because he knows about some of these people's proclivities. And so they're not going to do jack shit. But I think they tried to weaponize the deep state and lost, which is exactly like why Rosenstein was up on stage with AG Barr. You know he didn't want to be there. He wanted to resign the second that the Mueller probe was completed. He got approached, I'm sure, by Barr and said, no, you're not resigning yet. You can, but you're going to have to wait a few weeks. You're going to have to, one hand washes the other. It's just an elaborate game, an elaborate sort of floor show. It's a bit like Game of Thrones, a lot of intrigue and backstabbing and crazy shit like that. Probably a lot of incest. It is, Hollywood, DC, Wall Street. These people get up to some eyes wide shut shit, I'm sure. I think it is a little bit libertine at times, a little bit like a Marquis de Sade story at times with some of these people. I'm not talking about like the Pizzagate sort of stuff. No, I'm talking about there are people in positions of power that have the same tendencies as any other randomly selected group of people in the population, and probably on steroids, probably amplified because they happen to have more money and power. They're more enabled. The people that are going to be drawn to political power, high-level celebrity status, that build the third mansion and stuff like that, are going to have a mindset that tends to be different from normal people, so-called. It's funny how people can look at the history of Rome and they can see that they barely ever had a sane emperor who didn't have 20 concubines or boff little boys or horses or something like Caligula mode. It's funny that they can look back and say, well, we're so much more civilized. Our politicians never do this. Our celebrities don't act like Germany in the 1910s or something like that. Bullshit. Absolutely they do. That's about all. Peace out.